Chapter 5. The last time I went to see him, my brother asked him, "When will you be getting out of here?" And he said, "I think the time I get out of here will be in a coffin." 2:15 a.m. Saturday, February 2nd, 1980. "What's going on?" the captain of the Black Muslims asked when a Chicano rider unlocked his door. Before he could step out, three white militants moved in front of the open doorway and answered, "Brother, this is a riot. You got 5 minutes to talk to your people and find out if they're with us or not." The Muslims nodded mutely, and the militants turned and left cell house 6. When the Muslim captain walked out onto the catwalk, he saw that the only other inmates the three white militants had released were the few Chicanos and whites housed in the predominantly black cell house. "All right, brothers," he yelled, cranking open the Muslim cell doors as he made his announcement. "As you can see, this is a riot, and Whitey and the Mex want to know if we're with them or against them in this shit. Some of you gotta go spread the word to the other brothers on the south side. Tell them we're gonna meet in here in 5, man. These dudes are anxious." There was no ceiling separating the first or second tiers of the cell house, so everyone in the unit could hear his booming voice. Some of the blacks went out into the prison to get their brothers. Others went up to the second tier and started unlocking those cell doors. Soon, the second tier day room and catwalk were filled with every black in the prison, except those locked up in protection. The Muslim captain stood in the middle of the noisy crowd of men, raising voice and hands to quiet them. "Listen, brothers, see what's coming down. Now what do we do? Stay out or get into it? I think if we don't get into it, we'll have to get down with every whitey and Mex in this joint. I'd rather raise hell with the man." The crowd shouted their agreement, but he boomed over the uproar, "We've got to make this unit and the old men's dorm our territorial line. If we spread too thin, Whitey might want to fuck with some of our brothers. And one more thing, our minister is in protection. We have to make getting him out of there our first priority. Once the mob gets in there, there's going to be deep trouble, and we don't want him messed with." He stopped because movement at the door caught his eye. 10 Aryan brothers and twice as many of the Mexican mafia were coming into the vestibule at the front of the unit. Some of them were standing on the stairs blocking the exit. They looked as if they were ready to go to war then and there if they got the wrong answer to the question. One of them yelled, "Well, what's it gonna be?" "Count us in," the Muslim leader said loudly. "My people are as tired of the man fucking us over as you are. It's payback time, all right? There's just one deal we have to make." "What's that?" "We want to get Jeff Brewster out of protection when you get in there. And I mean, we want to be the first to enter and get him the fuck out of there before anything comes down." The militant spoke in the front lines. The militant spokesman in the front lines looked at each other for silent advice and nodded back approval. "Okay with us," the leader said out loud. "Well, we're with you then. You need us, you always find someone right here, because this is going to be our headquarters." For this night, at least, there was peace among the races, peace for the sake of a greater war. The rioters who gone back to the control center to look for the keys to cell block 3 were having trouble finding them in the debris. In their impatience to get their friends out of lockup, the group waiting at the cell block door decided to go down to the basement and get Officer Mendoza. They'd seen him run there after refusing to open up the upstairs grill. They demanded that he open this gate, which led to the maximum detention units, the bottom tier of cell block 3. But once again, Officer Mendoza refused. "Let's go get us a hostage to make him change his mind. What say, bro?" The bros agreed, and off they went to dormitory E2, returning with Captain Roybal, who they slammed up against the bars of the locked grill. "Okay, Mendoza, if you're brave enough to take a look from your hiding place, you'll see we've got your old Captain Roybal here. He ain't very comfortable. He's been beaten pretty bad. This shank we're holding to his throat's only gonna make him feel worse. Because if you don't open the door, Mendoza, we're gonna slit his head off his shoulders and roll it down the aisle." Officer Mendoza didn't have to make a decision. "Hey man, fuck those pigs. We found the keys," a Chicano rioter announced, running up to the group. "They were buried under a ton of shit down there. Someone must have known. Someone must have knocked them down when we tore it apart." They fumbled with the keys and had difficulty finding the right one. In that small interim, 3 guards came out of their hiding closet and locked themselves behind another grill. When the rioters finally succeeded in unlocking the gate and were inside, the officers surrendered. They were roughed up, hit across the legs with pipes, spit on, cursed at, but their treatment was nowhere near as brutal as that of the first 7 guards. These three officers were ordered to strip naked. Then they were shoved into a cell and locked in. They remained there for the duration of the riot. "Hey, what's going on out there?" a voice called from one of the maximum detention units. Maximum detention units have solid doors with no windows, so the inmates inside could only hear that there was more noise than usual. Perhaps he didn't believe his ears when he heard the answer shouted back, "It's a riot, man. We've taken over the joint. Who are you?" "Primi Martinez." "Far out. Let me out of this fucking hole so I can join in, will you?" "Oh, good old Archie Martinez, eh? Primi, baby. Is that really you all locked up in that dungeon? Primi Martinez, the king of the snitches?" "Nah, man, we're not gonna let you out. We're gonna come in there and show you how much we appreciate all you've done for us, Primi. You know what we mean, so you can really feel it, right down to your prick." There was silence from the cell. Primi Martinez was busy jamming his toothbrush in the crack of his door so it couldn't be cranked open. Just in time, too. The rioters were in front of his cell as he got it in place. When the crank wouldn't move, they demanded he open the door. "Fuck you, no way," he answered, his tone more surely than fearful. "If you don't, we're gonna do you real bad when we get in there, and we'll get in, Primi, so make your confession, bro, cause your day has come." Most of this was said in their native language, but being a homeboy wasn't going to save Archie Martinez. He was the biggest snitch in the joint. There were a lot of men in cell block 3 who'd been put there, and a lot of rioters he'd informed on. They vowed they'd be back with some of these men and better weapons to deal with him. Specifically, they had in mind a blowtorch they knew was kept in the basement plumbing shop. The group moved along the hallway, asking who was inside each of the units as they went. They unlocked 3 or 4 inmates who were from general population. But when they heard the name Juan Sanchez, someone remembered that he was that crazy son of a bitch that a buddy of theirs had beef with. Juan Sanchez was a Mexican national who'd been placed in the protection unit because he was genuinely insane, not because he was a snitch. Even those in protection can't get thrown in the hole if they get wild. And Juan Sanchez often got wild. Daddy hadn't been sent to the loony bin, the forensic unit in Las Vegas, New Mexico, instead of the joint, always amazed everyone. From the moment Sanchez had come into the prison, his behavior smacked of derangement. He tried to kill himself several times, cutting his arms open with razors in the first attempt. Then he turned his attacks on other inmates. He would get delusional and talk about seeing visions of the devil and Jesus Christ. All this earned him a label, paranoid schizophrenic, from the psych department, plus lockup. First in cell block 3, then the protection unit. It also brought the wrath of the guards who would beat him up constantly for no good reason except that they were tired of his babbling. In March of 1979, he complained to the administration that his sink was stopped up. Their response was to call the goon squad, who did their usual lesson teaching routine, hitting them in the back, ribs, and head with their clubs before throwing them in the hole. Naked, of course. Juan Sanchez might have been crazy, but he had enough marbles to write a letter to the Mexican consulate shortly thereafter, in May of 1979, asking to be transferred to Mexico as part of the U.S.-Mexico prisoner transfer treaty happening at the time. "The officials of the institution and the prisoners are torturing me," his letter began. A fight with another prisoner, he wrote, had caused an inmate to threaten to kill him. "How are you going to kill me when we are locked up in separate cells in cell block 3, he asked inmate. He said he was going to take my life and has played cards and lost the game. The inmate began harassing him, calling him a galena, coward. The inmate began harassing him, calling him a gallina, coward, and joto, homosexual. In fact, when he wrote the consulate, both prisoners and prison officials taunted him about his courage and his manhood. I heard on the official loudspeaker that I had confessed to the gringos and Chicanos that I was a coward and a homosexual. They were playing with my honor as a man, torturing me mentally, withholding food, trying to humiliate me. But the Mexican consulate didn't take immediate enough action to save Juan Sanchez. A rioter armed with a tear gas gun opened the windowless cell door and walked in. Juan Sanchez was standing in a corner mumbling to himself. The light let in by the open door blinded him, unaccustomed as he was to anything but darkness, so he didn't see the rioter approach and fire a tear gas canister into his face. Maybe he didn't even feel his head explode. Maybe Juan Sanchez died peacefully with the help of his delusional angels. His murderer and the small band of rioters with him turned their attention to the main goal, freeing their buddies upstairs in cell block 3. They dragged the naked and badly battered Captain Roybal along with them instead of returning to dormitory E2. This was a smart move on their part. They had the keys to the unit's main grill, but the gates at the entrance of each row of cells were controlled by a panel they didn't know how to operate. A shank was held to Captain Roybal's throat once again as he was forced to show them how the panel worked. When the first tier was opened, 4 or 5 of the men ran down the corridors shouting the good news and cranking open the cell doors. The inmates in the cell block began whooping and yelling, "Hurry up, bro. Let's get this goddamn grill open so I can get out of here. We've got work to do. It's about time we fucked up this place." Their uproar could be heard all over the north side of the prison. Many of these men had been locked up for 6 months or more. The prospect of getting out of their cells and having the freedom to walk around would have been enough to excite them, but the added incentive of revenge made their blood boil. While these inmates were being released, the rest of this liberating band of rioters dragged Roybal up to the 3rd tier and forced him to show them how to operate that control panel. They rewarded him by locking him in the first cell open. He stayed there for the duration of the riot, naked, no doubt cold, and as he listened to the convicts going wild as they were set free, wondering if he'd ever come out of this alive. A lieutenant of the Aryan Brotherhood, one of the original riot instigators from dormitory E2, ran up and down the aisles looking for 2 of his close buddies, also bikers and honchos in the Brotherhood. They've been in lockup since being captured after their December breakout with 9 other escapees. When he found one, the first words out of his mouth were, "Well, bro, looks like you guys finally got your shit together. Hurry up and get the door open so I can get the fuck out of this son of a bitch." The lieutenant obliged, and the 2 of them went down the corridor until they came to the 3rd member of this triumphant. The lieutenant obliged, and the 2 of them went down the corridor until they came to the 3rd member of this triumvirate and cranked open his door. These 3 stayed close while they helped their other bros unlock all the whites in segregation. Meanwhile, the Chicanos were busy unlocking their clique and the blacks theirs until all 86 inmates in lockup, Meanwhile, the Chicanos were busy unlocking their clique and the blacks theirs until all 86 inmates in lockup, men the administration labeled as the most dangerous in the prison, were free. Most of the 14-member execution squad, a squad that would soon deal death to those they judged guilty of crimes against the convict ethic, came from among these inmates. It was a well-integrated clique. Chicanos, whites, and blacks were all represented in this execution squad. Once the Aryan Brotherhood had all been freed, they huddled in the middle tier of the cell block. "The first thing we all have to do is get ourselves real weapons," one of the leaders said, "and the best place to get them is in the kitchen. The next thing we gotta get is the snitches," another interrupted, gathering noisy agreement from his colleagues. "Right on, so let's fucking go." The group stormed down the corridor to the kitchen and broke into the steward's office, where they knew the knives were locked in a cabinet at night. In 10 minutes, they had the cabinet open and themselves armed with butcher knives and meat cleavers. These weapons didn't go unused for long. On the way out of the kitchen, the biker bumped into one of the armed old-timers. On the way out of the kitchen, the biker bumped into a one-armed old-timer who had refused to join the Aryan Brotherhood. When the 3 saw him, they decided to give him his paycheck. Pointing their knives at his throat and belly, they told him to get up against the wall. He did as he was told. But his obedience didn't save him. He was slammed on the head with a meat cleaver and knocked to the floor. Hold him down, man. I've always wanted to fuck a man with no arms. The biker's two companions complied, while he pulled a long carving knife out of his belt and started sawing through the skin and muscles of the man's only arm. The old-timer wasn't any slouch. Whether through fear or pain, he managed to wriggle and wrestle his way free of the two holding him down, kneeing his attacker off of him. Run for his life down the smoky, crowded corridor. The three didn't bother chasing him, they just laughed. Fuck him, one said. We've got more important shit to take care of. The one-armed old-timer didn't lose life or limb, but the tendons and muscles were cut so severely that the use of his only arm was forever seriously impaired. A hard way to go in the world.